Roll.
What page are we on?
What do you want to drink,
80.
hot or cold?
Cool.
Okay.
Please.
Oh, hot tea if you're making it.
Tea? Let me get you cold. I'm gonna bring.
You know what? I'll have hot.
No, you can if you want.
See that?
I have plenty.
Chocolates are these. And if there's a surprise in the middle, we'll find out. They're mixed. Okay. Oh, you'll be seven. So.
I also have soda too, so I'm just gonna do Pellegrino. And then I'm gonna give you soda.
Hi, Ernie.
Hello.
Was B here for Pesach?
Yeah,
Oh, great.
they were here the first days,
Uh-huh.
and then they went to San Diego with their kids for Chol Hamoed
Oh, nice, nice.
and the Chainbergs, her machatonim.
Oh, right, yeah, yeah.
Hi, Harold.
They did the
Mario.
So how was Miami?
It was very nice. You know how Miami is.
Yeah.
It's worse than here. You need to speak Spanish there. No one speaks English. Every worker there,
Yes.
they had no idea what I'm talking about. I mean, they're so either illiterate or they just got off the boat or they're illegal. Hardly
You're
anyone
lucky.
spoke.
You're lucky your wife speaks the
I
lingo.
am.
So what happened to your hair?
I don't know what happened to it. I didn't get a haircut before Yontif. I have to get a haircut. It's the Albert Einstein look.
Okay.
All I need now is brains.
So how was the weather? Warm?
It was very nice. It was like
I think
80
we're on
every day.
88.
What's
we-
that?
88 exactly.
88, because we did the freshly coffee, we did the whole Starbucks via business.
Oh,
Yeah. Okay.
so where are we holding? We're on
88.
88, you said, right?
88. Volume 18.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, preparing toast on Shabbos. Okay.
Exactly.
Sounds interesting.
Toasted matzah does not sound interesting.
Yeah, toasting matzah. Yeah, boring.
It's crisp, but not toasting.
One year, Tzvika had this Syrian guy who comes to his shir. He brought a Syrian matzah, which is like soft. It's like lava. Very different.
We had, they had the OU had a halachic Suda about 20 years ago.
Yeah.
It was at the Prime Grill on Rodeo.
Oh, right, right.
Every 20 years, they used to do it at Lavana. Every 20 years, they did these Sudas where they brought out foods to keep the tradition. We had yak, we had marlin, they had all sorts of different foods. And I had soft matzah there. There's a Sephardic minhag.
Yeah.
Oh, you put that. Thank you, Susie. Is there,
You know what someone said?
is there a
New
spoon?
rabbi, what's his name?
Slifkin.
Clifton. He sent me for Pesach a box of locusts to eat, kosher locusts.
No joke.
Not a joke.
The problem is
threw it
only
away.
the
It's
Sephardim.
disgusting.
Only the Sephardim have a Masorah.
It had hashgacha on it. So who's going to eat that? It looks disgusting.
Eli would have.
The Sephardim
Maybe, yeah.
The Sephardim have, but we don't have a
No.
Masorah to eat that.
Hey, Harold,
Yeah.
if you put them in the oven just warm, the locust starts to dance.
I'll take your word for it. It was disgusting.
Okay, we're on page 88, preparing toast on Shabbos. We saw above that despite the principle of ein bishul achar bishul, normally we say there's no cooking after something's been cooked. The Rishonim dispute whether yesh bishul achar afia, right? If you baked something, there were opinions that said by the kalei abishul, like maybe a piece of bread or something which is easily cooked. So we said you have to be machmir if it's yad soletis bo. And contemporary poskim also dispute the practical applications of the principle. However, the Magen Avram writes that all agreed that ein sli achar tzli. There is no prohibition of roasting food that is already roasted. And ein afia achar afia. That is, bishul achar something we take serious, we are stringent about. But if you've roasted something or you've baked something, there is no baking or roasting after the original act. Says the Magen Avram, or Chaim Shin same sermon that we've been in.
Tony, so does it mean I'm sorry, that if you have a toast that you made yesterday, could you put it on the blech tomorrow morning? No.
Let's learn. That's what we're learning today. Let's see what the ramification of this issue of you can't roast something if it's roasted already. What does it mean practically? So first, the Magen Avram gives us the halacha. L'kula alma ein tzli achar tzli. You can't roast something that's already been roasted. Davar shenitz lemuter litno eitz la'esh. Therefore, something that's been roasted, you can put it next to the fire. Afilu nitztanein, even if it's cooled off. V'hu adin ha'afui. The same thing applies to something that was baked. If it's baked or roasted, you could put it close to the fire to warm it up, even if it was in the refrigerator. The Sholem Hashiv writes that even given this principle, toasting bread or softening toast by putting it in soup could be prohibited. His source is a rule stipulated by the Rambam that any action that either hardens a soft item or softens a hard item is a derivative of the malach of bishul. Nishalti me'arav moreno arav Yisachar Nero Yair Misakul. By the way, my grandmother was born in Sakul. It's a little town in Galicia. There were big rabbanim there. Shara b'sefer echad mechachvei Sfarad. She'oser lasos panitzin b'Shabbos. One of the Sephardic chachamim prohibited making toast. Dahainu shikach lechem shenefe. Take a piece of bread that was baked, ulanicho al gabi tanur, and put it on top of the oven. Sheyeh kula muksha ad sheyu panitzin, so it would become hard like toast. Or v'chein lehefech, the opposite. Lakachas panitzin, take something that was toasted, hamukshim that are hard, uletitam l'toch marak, and put it into soup. Sounds like croutons. Hinei Magen Avram siman shin yud ches. Cause of the imhu yavesh, if something is dry, ein bishul achar afia, you can't cook something after it's been baked. Imkein mashma demuter gam bepanitzin shari nefa mikodem. So you would think there would be no bishul of this toast because it was already baked before. Vani omarti bereshis hashkafa sheyesh le'esor. So the Sholem Meshiv, who was Rav Yosef Shol Nathanson, thought that it might be prohibited, based on Mimasha Kosav Rambam. Perek Tes Mishab is Klol Shel Dover, Kol Sreifa Dover Kosher. If you soften something, Sheripa Dover Kosher. Ripa means to soften, something hard. O Shehikshe Gufrach, or you harden something soft, Osir. Baria panitzim akoshim, the toast which is hard, kol shemarafim b'marok, if you soften them in soup, harezim marape guf kosher, you are doing exactly what the Rambam tells you not to do. You're softening something that is hard. Shiny yavesh, de'ena kosher, something that is dry, where the Magen Avram said you can roast it, is de'ena kosher kolkach. Think about like a roasted piece of chicken. It's not hard. So that lechora is maybe what the Magen Avram is talking about by putting it next to the fire to warm it up, even though it was cold. Avalkan shemar peguf kasha, but if by taking the hard toast and softening it in soup, efshar de osir. He doesn't say for sure that it's osir. He says perhaps it's osir tzarich iyun, requires further analysis. The Ben Ish Chai argues that making toast or softening it cannot constitute bishul. However, if the toast is so hard that it's inedible, and softening it makes it edible, this is prohibited under the malach of makeh b'patish, which means striking with a hammer, which means a malach that includes any action that completes a constructive task. So making toast falls into the same category and is prohibited, says the Ben Ish Chai. His shilas and shuvitz was the Rav Pa'olim. Ve'achrea mechila argav churfei lodog. He's saying the Sholem Meshiv, he says he's going to ask forgiveness from him because he thinks that the Sholem Meshiv wasn't precise. The Lishros pas kasha niskar b'she'ela b'morav, to soak hardened bread in soup, kedei la'achlo pshita de mutter. The Ben Ish Chai, the Sephardic rabbi who was in Baghdad up until the early 20th century, ein sheila zu tzricha lefanim. This is not bishul, and it's clearly mutter. Ve'en lezeh dimyon in dinam merapet kosher shekos of a Rambam. It's not comparable to what the Rambam was talking about, softening a hard item. Chada de Hasam, there the Rambam, because of a Rambam, Mishum Davi told us mavashel. He was talking about something that would be a sort of subcategory of cooking. This can't be cooking because it's already been baked. The Magen Avram said if it's dry, ain't bishul achrafia. V'od hasamu derech malacha shemarape guf kosher kedei sheyitzach l'malacha sherotzeba. There, you soften something that was firm in order to make it useful. Meaning it wasn't a food item. It was something that was used maybe industrially, which you wanted to soften to use for some mechanical reason. Says the Ben Ish Chai, kanu oichel, here we're talking about food. V'derech achilu huzeh, shemar feir b'marag. By softening hard bread in soup, you're softening it kedei sheyuchal lachlo yafa, so you can eat it. Miu, he says, he qualifies him. Zeh pas kosher arbe. Now, if the bread is unedible because it's so hard, very old bread, you can't eat it below Shriya b'marag. So there he says by correcting it to make it edible, that's like makeh b'patish. It's like finishing an act. He gives a different reason to prohibit it, but regular toast that you would eat anyways, he says, does not fall into the Isser of the Sholem Meshiv, so that he doesn't think it needs a tzorch iyun, and you'd be able to put it into soup to soften it up.
Ernie, you can put your shmura matzah in the soup. I mean, not during Pesach, but you can put your shmura, the hard shmura matzah.
For those of us who eat gebrachts, of course we can put it. My grandmother every morning had matzah in the coffee. That was her favorite thing. So, ein chanami. It's a perfect example. The matzah can be eaten. You want to soften it to make it easier to eat. And based on the Ben Ish Chai, you're allowed to do it, even on Shabbos. He says it's not an issue of bishul acharafia.
But we don't paskin like the Ben Ish Chai on those things. I mean, come on.
Let's see how we paskin regarding the Shmir Shabbos
What about
Kilchas.
putting a tortilla on your plata?
Susie asked about putting a tortilla on the plata. So let's get to see where we finish here regarding that. A tortilla is baked, correct? What is it,
Mhm.
fried or baked?
No, it's baked, it's baked,
Okay, so that would fall under the same category here
just warm.
so far. Shmir Shabbos Gilchasa rules, though, that making toast on Shabbos is prohibited. See, however, there, where he writes that contracting to the ruling of the Sholem Meshiv, softening toast or croutons by putting them in soup is permitted, as the liquid makes them soft, irrespective of the heat. See also 11, where the Shmir Shabbos writes that no makeh b'patish exists with respect to food. It would seem that his reasons for ruling strictly pertain to bishul, based on heat. However, Rav Ovadia Yosef rejects both reasons given to prohibit making toast, as neither the prohibition of hardening a soft item nor the malach of makeh b'patish should apply to food. He therefore concludes that making toast on Shabbos is permitted. Aval pi shagon bal sholem meshiv posak she'aser loses lecha mafli al gabi ataner b'Shabbos kadesh is kasher yoser. He already ruled that it's prohibited to put a piece of baked bread on the oven to harden it, the asat snimim, to make it toast. Vevi Rami Masha Posaka Rambam, he brought a proof that the Rambam says she'aser l'rapo is over kasher, you can't soften something hard or lachshus over rach v'kanare hoifech es alechem harach l'tzdinim koshim. And here you're taking soft bread, making it hard. He says he doesn't think the Sholem Moshiv is mandatory la'alacha. Shedivret Rambam she'asel rapus davar kasher lachshus davar rach. The Rambam who said you can't soften something, harden something. Einam shayachim l'gabi davar Michael. He was talking about other items, but not food. The Rav Ovadia Yosef takes as a given that you can take dried bread and soak it into soup. Omnam Agon Rav Yosef Chaim, the Ben Ish Chai, B'shut Rav Pa'olim, Hiskim Lachmer Kidiver Sholem Meshiv, Mitam Shezeh Nechshav K'Gemar Malacha. He pointed out that the Ben Ish Chai felt that in some cases it would be prohibited like the Sholem Meshiv, because it's makeh b'patish. Kishoyfech zalechem letzninim, v'yesh b'zeh isur mishum leches makeh b'patish. Ulam be'emes nira ikar kedivar achronim shenifsku l'hakel b'zeh. Rav Ovadia is passing like the achronim that said you can be lenient by food. V'lo yichoshishu klal isur shel makeh b'patish mishum shalechem roy lachila od lifnei sheyas etzninim. You can eat the bread before you made it toast, so it doesn't apply, because it was already finished before you put it on the oven. Mikoshke lefima she'ela b'sefer Tehillah leDavid chelik beis sha'ir k'dei divrei Talmud shalanu she'ein din makeh b'patish ba'oichlin. As opposed to the Talmud Yerushalmi, our Talmud Bavli holds that there is no concept of makeh b'patish regarding food. The Bir Arlacha rules that one is permitted to prepare edible food even when it is transformed into a different type of food, as long as there's no bishul. If so, he likely would not forbid making toast for the reason given by the Ben Ish Chai. Right? He says that this concept of makeh b'patish by food is something we don't find by the poskim. We shouldn't be concerned about washing cold food. He's discussing whether one may rinse food in cold water that will otherwise be inedible if you didn't wash it. Because there's no, again, you're transforming it, but there's no makeh b'patish by food, so it's not a problem. Rav Willig suggests that the halachic status of toasting on Shabbos depends upon a machlokas between the eglei tal and the taz, concerning the understanding of the reason for prohibiting bishul acharafiyah. Why, in some cases, do we prohibit something that is baked to be put in something hot? Because we worried about bishul acharafiyah. There is a dispute between the taz and the eglei tal as to why it is prohibited to cook after baking. According to the taz, cooking after baking is prohibited because it confers a new taste on the food. according to the Eglei Tal, cooking after baking is prohibited because it confers a new halachic status on the food. But toasting after baking, which confers a new taste, but not a new halachic status, would be permitted according to the Taz, but prohibited according to the Eglei Tal. Many other modern poskim maintain that making toast on Shabbos is permitted, as noted in the Dirshu edition of the Mishnah Brura. It says, "B'sefer das Torah, mashma shemuter lasoitz seninim b'Shabbos." You can make toast v'chein das agon of Nissim Karelitz in the Chut Hashani, v'af agon of Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, kosov shekein mistaber. He felt it was logical as well, Rav Shlomo Zalman.
Can we put them on the blech?
I don't see a problem with that. Regarding the tortillas, can you warm them up? It sounds like according to these poskim that are lenient, you'd be able to do it. It's something that's been baked already. It follows the same principle.
Leave it on the blech, let it get warm.
Yeah.
Expediting the cooking process. In addition to the forms of bishul we have seen so far, there's another type of action that qualifies as bishul, known as memaher bishulo. You expedite the cooking process. One of the first references to this type of bishul is found in Tosfos, who writes that one may not insulate food that is still cooking on Shabbos, as this expedites the cooking process. V'im hitmin tapuchim imaktera. Let's say you put a pot of food that's cooking and you put it in the ground. That's the classic case of hatmana. Im hitmin tapuchim imakter osur la'achzir korim v'kasus alakdei rashimon. And let's say there were pillows and cushions covering the pot, and you had removed them, and you want to return the cushions and the pillows to cover it. You can't do it. Or to add pillows. If you return the pillows and the apples haven't cooked completely, so nimtza mavasha b'Shabbos, you're adding to the cooking process on Shabbos. So peiros and a Shulchan Aruch paskins, peiros shenacholim chayim, fruit that you eat raw, like an apple. So mutter litneim saviv hakadera, you can put it around a pot that is cooking, and that's permitted. You can put it litnim saviv hakadera avul pi she'efshar sheyitzlu kodem chashecha. They're not going to be completely roasted before dark. You can't return the cover of the pot in this gala. If the pot had been uncovered before Shabbos, once Shabbos comes, you can't cover the pot again, unless the fruit has been completely roasted. You don't want to add heat to allow the apple to roast. You are causing it to cook faster. And even if the food inside the pot is fully cooked, the cover of the pot covers the raw fruit around the sides of the pot as well, thus accelerating its cooking. The Bir Halacha points out that this ruling assumes that cooking food that has already reached the level of Michael ben Drusoy, which we said is like 1/3, is prohibited on a biblical level. But that's a subject of a dispute between the Rishonim. We learned that already in volume 17. V'od matzati chevel Rishonim, a group of Rishonim, the kaimi b'chadashitza da'ad shenigmar bishul kotzrocha yesh bo mishum bishul, that until a food is completely cooked and it continues to cook on Shabbos, you're going to be chayav for bishul on Shabbos. Who sefer truma, v'hasmak, Vagos Maimoniyot. These are all Rishonim that are major halachists. Shekosvu sheyizar shelo yosef kisui, that you shouldn't add covering once Shabbos starts. Mishatechshach halaktir shelo nigmar bishulav kol tzorcha. A dish, let's say it's been cooked a third before Shabbos, but it continues cooking on Shabbos. You can't add heat to that because you're going to help with Neshama Bishul Yedei by adding insulation, pillows or any other insulation, increasing the heat. The Tur and the Shulchan Aruch brought these opinions. That we're coming to Isser Deraisa by covering it, and by adding it. You're talking about food that hasn't been cooked completely. Based on this, the Orcha Shabbos writes that one should be careful not to close a chulin pot on Shabbos before it has fully cooked. Once it's fully cooked before Shabbos, you can put the pot on it. Otherwise, if you put the pot on it and it's not fully cooked, now if it's we're talking about if the cover had remained on it, so it's not a problem. But you shouldn't close the chulin pot before it is fully cooked on Shabbos.
On Shabbos. But
If
before
the-
Shabbos, you can leave the cover.
If you
on
leave the
if
cover
the-
on, if you haven't touched the cover, but putting the cover back on is a problem because you've added heat if it hasn't cooked completely.
What happens if you take it and you?
If it's fully cooked, then you can taste it because you're not adding the bishul. Meaning Friday night, let's say it's Shabbos already. If it's fully cooked, then there's no problem. But you have a problem because if it's not fully cooked, by removing it and putting it back, you could be adding to the cooking of the process.
So no tasting on Friday night?
Well, if it's fully cooked,
Is fully cooked.
Is
fully cooked machal drusai? It's not.
no. Michael Drusoy is 1/3. You understand? So most of us wouldn't eat Michael Drusoy.
Yeah.
Right?
We-
But
After dinner?
I've eaten. By the way, other people are noyeg that they don't remove the cover completely. They just tilt it to take some out, and you understand they don't really remove the cover completely.
Yeah, but you opened it up. Once you open it up, you're letting some of the yeah.
I know, but
Again, you're reheating it.
the problem is chazara. The problem is they're talking removing the king and putting it back. So that's why some people are annoyed to just open it a little bit.
That's why Saul, his daughter, makes 2 cholents.
What? Because people want to
She
eat it.
does. One day they eat.
They eat
the
from it.
boys Eat late Friday night. They eat some cholent, it's
Yeah.
a smaller one, and nobody touches the one for
Yeah.
Shabbos.
Well, let's see what the Orcha Shabbos says. Nizbor le'el, sheroy la'akbit shekola tavshilim ha'oindim ala eish, or ala plata. Any food that is either on the fire itself, or ala plata, or is on the blech, b'Shabbos, yumu v'shalim kol tzorcha b'knisas ha'Shabbos. So rule number 1 is everything should be fully cooked before Shabbos. So if you keep it on a slow flame, or you keep it on a plata, which he's equating, okay? You know, if he's equating that, if you don't, you're not turning it's the same as you're the plata and a flame is not a difference in that regard, but it has to be fully cooked. And these other things are just basically keeping it warm. Now we know those of us who've eaten chulent, we like it. The more it's cooked, the tastier it is, to a limit. You don't want to burn it, but cooking it for longer and longer. That's why we leave the chulent until noontime, because it tastes really good when it's oska kocht like that. But some people eat it when it's much less cooked and enjoy it. It's liquidy. Some people like it that way, and some people don't like it that way. But it's still edible. I wouldn't call that not cooked. It's still cooked. The longer it cooks, it develops a different taste. It becomes, like well cooked out chulent. Okay. But it's got to be cooked fully before Shabbos. And as long as and especially if you're keeping it on the fire or on the plata. Yumushon kol tzorcha b'knisas Shabbos. V'imena tavshel muvushal kol tzorcha. if whatever you're doing, it's not just chulin. People put navel pastrami's in a crock pot
Mhm.
to cook until the next day. What other people have yapsuk? That's the same as chulin. What other
Right.
items? What other things do people do? What other things do people do that put in a crock? Those things.
Yeah.
Okay.
A kugel.
Kugel, I'm not sure. People put well, yapsuk is like a kugel. Okay.
So good.
But it's not,
I need
but
to-
yapsuk is liquidy more. A kugel is something, a davar gush. Yapsuk is not a davar gush. Yeah, davar gush means it's solid. The yapsuk is not solid.
In most cases, it is.
The one you
It
made
is.
was not
Mine's
solid.
Great.
It's
Mine's
like mashed potato.
No, it isn't. Mine's
No, it shouldn't be
delicious.
that loose.
It's not. He just probably got a bad spoonful of it.
V'meina tavshil muvushal kol tzorcho. V'afilu rak echad mimarkivav ein muvushal kol tzorcho. It doesn't have to be the whole dish. There might be a piece of meat in there that's not fully cooked yet.
That's doesn't
Kugon kishashashuot shebechamim lo nizbasha kol tzorcho. Like beans in the chulent. Maybe they're not fully cooked yet, right? Then you have to be very careful not to touch this item. If you do something that adds heat to it, so now we have to now. So what are the ramifications of that? So if the item, you can't move the item closer to the fire if it's not fully cooked yet. So, for example, let's say a part of it is near the flame, but not fully on the flame. So you can't move it more on the flame. That would be adding heat.
Mm.
Certainly, if this pot had been removed from the fire, you can't put it back on the fire. But as he said, technically, if it was still on the fire, you could leave it there. You can't touch it. We can't do anything to add something on. What's happening, memela, is happening. Meaning, if you're not adding anything on Shabbos. We said. Now here we talk about what Walter was dealing with. If you've lifted the lid of the pot, you can't cover it again. So let's see the footnote. First of all, let's look at footnote 23. One must comply in this situation with the laws of Shehiyah, which require that certain conditions be fulfilled where the food is not yet fully cooked, according to some, not yet 1/2 cooked. And we will discuss Shehiyah in the next sheet. And a lot of this will become more understandable. See also Shmir's Kelchasa, who writes that even if the food in the pot is fully cooked, one should ideally not place the lid back on the pot if it was removed while the pot is on the fire. This is similar to the act of megis, stirring, but we noted in Shir 1 that in practice, one should not stir cooked food on the fire due to the stringency of the kolba. Although this stringency is found in some earlier achronim cited by Shmir Shabbos, the Ktsosa Shulchan, the Ma'ora Shabbos, and the Piskei Teshuvos write that one need not be strict about this in most cases, except perhaps if the lid causes the food to begin to boil, or if it contains droplets of cold water that will be heated, since none of the other commentators on the Shulchan Aruch mention it. So there's a stringency about this lid business, but there's some that are makel. Okay. V'chein ein lahosif kisui nosaf. You can't put anything on top of that lid. Kugon laniach beged, to put a garment on that. I mean, who would do that? On a hot thing, al gabi k'ter sachamim, you'd be worried that it was going to burn. Mishum shemamar b'zes abishul. That's going to cause the cooking to happen more rapidly. V'lachein yesh lizar sheminiach me'erev Shabbos kiso al gabi k'ter samarak. Let's say you put a cover on the pot that's cooking soup, and you did this Erev Shabbos. The kisu is mechasa games k'teres hachamim. Now, let's say the cover also covers the chulin pot. I don't know what they're
When you
talking
do it
about
before
there.
Shabbos, it's not.
No,
changing.
somehow this kisui, this cover, is covering both the soup pot and the chulin pot. Azai kasher notel there's some arak. Me'al gabi ha'esh. So when you take the soup pot off of the fire, also lekapel sakiso gabi k'ter sachamim, you wouldn't be able to cover the chulin pot with that same cover. Im yesh ba dvarim shadayin lo nisbashel kol tzorchan. If that chulin, that stuff hadn't cooked yet. Mishum dal yidei couple, because by putting the folding it, I don't know what kind of cover they're talking about, some kind of folding cover, maybe.
Ernie, what are they talking about? Fully cooked. It's 51%, 60%, 70%.
No, fully cooked means fully cooked.
Yeah.
Fully cooked means fully cooked, not partially cooked. This bashel kol tzorchel. Our chefs, our wives will know when something is full. When you're cooking spaghetti, so it's 3/4 cooked. They know it's not fully cooked. When they taste it, and now it's fully cooked, right? It's got to reach a point of being fully cooked. Because hey, soup also, it's fully cooked. It's boiling, whatever. It's ready to be eaten. But when soup is, could be only half cooked because it's still raw. The vegetables in it, the chicken, etc., etc. So cooking kol tzorchel means fully cooked, not a percentage. It's not rov. We said that we'll see that there's going to be opinions that food has to be half cooked before you leave it, etc., etc. We'll see what the dinim of shehiyah are regarding partial.
But maybe somebody likes they chol and dre. They want dre meat in it. If a person goes to a restaurant, they ask for steak. They want a dre or medium rare. That's considered for them. That's cooked.
I agree.
So that's
So if it reaches a point where you would eat it, and that's the ideal thing, it's considered kol tzorchel.
what happens if somebody else would eat it and you would? I'm just saying. What happens if somebody would eat it?
Okay, that's probably the definition of mavashel kol tzorchel. I think we discussed this before when in the previous shiurim.
Okay.
It has to be cooked, ready to be eaten, and if somebody likes his steak rare, then no, I like my hamburger
All the
rare.
son-in-laws like it rare.
Okay, that would be. In fact, I wouldn't want to eat it fully. So it's clearly got to have that definition. Okay.
See how they like it here.
Melting ice and heating congealed liquids. This is another issue that may potentially involve bishul. Using heat to melt ice. I don't know who's doing that. Or congealed liquids and heat them to the temperature of Yad Soledesbo. So in order to properly understand the halachic issues involved, we must first consider whether melting ice may be prohibited for other reasons, even without using heat. The permissibility of melting ice is dependent on how to understand the halacha quoted by the Gemara in Masechta Shabbos. The Gemara cites a baraisa stating that crushing ice to produce water is prohibited, but leaving it to melt in a cup or bowl is permitted. Ein merazkin lo sashelek v'lo sabara. You may not crush snow or hail in order that you want to have water to drink. You can put it in a cup, and it melts on its own. It's not a problem. The Rishonim dispute the nature of this prohibition, crushing. Rashi understands that although crushing ice is not a malacha, it is similar to a malacha, as it creates water, and therefore is rabbinically prohibited on Shabbos. He implies that the reason one may leave it to melt by itself is because Chazal only prohibited creating water by direct action. You're creating something new, i.e. water, the dami lemlacha, so that's similar to a malacha. But by putting the ice, in a cup and let it melt, So look what's going on. It looks like somebody's putting ice in a bowl because he has maybe a bottle of wine and he wants to cool the bottle of wine. So he puts that in the ice. Eventually the ice melts. I guess you can drink the water. It's not a problem. Rashi uses the word moli. You produce something new. The Sefer HaTruma instead uses the passive form of the same verb, nolad, and he extends the prohibition to liquefying congealed fat. Also, shaleg, you can't crush snow. Make it like water. Nolad. He doesn't say molid, he says it's nolad. The chein nirish also lose is pashtida. That's like a baked food. That's like kugel. Chein nirish also lose patid b'meach chorif in winter, but tzara eish l'chamama to warm it. B'yom haShabbos lefi hasham nunit, the fat sheyesh bo nikrash. The fat goes I guess from liquid to solid. V'nasa avakafui, or it was sort of congealed in the kugel. The atanimcha melts. The naset solul, very nolad, and there's a problem of nolad in this as well. And the Truma, Sefer Truma continues by explaining that leaving ice to melt in a cup of wine is permitted because this is indirect, and also because the water produced is unrecognizable. Imatzniach hatichut parad, shekoin galtza, you take ice, hail, the oimek karka, you're storing it deep in the ground. K'moshosin be'eretz Ashkelon, they do in Germany. We must it's noisni ma'abarad b'toch koshel yain. You can take this ice and put it in a glass of wine, litzadano, to cool off the wine. Zemuter. Avabishu nimchasham, the ice is dissolving there, but haigrama ba'alma, it's happening through indirect action. Meila, by itself, nimcha. You put wine in it. You put ice in the wine, and now it doesn't look like water. It looks like wine, so it's not recognizable as water. The Rashba infers from the use of the passive term nolad, usually used by the Gemara to describe a form of muktzah, applying to items produced on Shabbos, that the Sefer HaTruma understands the prohibition of crushing ice on Shabbos to be related to muktzah, unlike Rashi, who said that you've created something new. Now, when the Sefer HaTruma uses the word nolad, for example, an egg that is laid on Shabbos, you may not touch, because it's muktzah. Why is it muktzah? Because it's nolad. It's something new. Okay, but that's in Dine muktzah. Rashi didn't say that. Rashi said that by ice melting into water, you've created something new. So the act of creation is a problem, right? That's what the Rashba is showing us here. Two different things. The Rashba ultimately rejects the Sefer HaTruma, arguing that if creating nolad was prohibited on Shabbos, even doing so passively would be prohibited. You can't create something new on Shabbos. It would be a problem to let it just. The Gemara said you could leave ice in a bowl and would melt on its own. It's not a problem. If it's a problem of nolad, and you wouldn't be able to do that on Shabbos. Mashkos of Rav Zal, he's referring to Rashi. Mishum de kamoilid, you produce something new. Lav lemeiser mishum noilad ka'amar. It can't be that it's prohibited due to nolad. Elisha Isru mishum srach malacha lefishu kibori umolid amay malalu. It's like a malacha because you created something new. Aval the Sefer HaTruma kosuv shu also mishum nolad. So ulidvarov, according to the Sefer HaTruma, afilu b'chama aser davalei nolad. It would be aser to let it melt in the sun. Veinu mechaver. So it's not correct. The imkein lamei tir lasis tochakos. If you have a problem of nolad, why would you be able to put the piece of ice in a cup? Because it's melting in the coast. The Rashba concludes that crushing ice to produce water is prohibited rabbinically, due to its similarity to squeezing juice out of fruit, schita. So it's a gzeira d'rabbanan because of schita. li nira. So you see these Rishonim, Rashi, Sefer HaTorah, they're arguing, what's the problem with crushing that the Gemara mentioned, right? They're not sure. The Gemara doesn't tell us why. So the Rishonim, 500 years later, debated, well, why did the Gemara say it's prohibited? Well, so one said it's because you create something new. The other said maybe that it's like a muktzah. And now the Rashba says it's a gzeres schita, the perus. Ha'omdim lamashkin naguba. So you have lemons and oranges. Those are perus that are oimed l'schita. An apple is not oimed l'schita. An apple is not roy to squeeze it. We can't make apple juice. Apple juice is made industrially by whatever process it's made, but we can't make it by squeezing it. But fruit like lemon and lime and oranges, we squeeze. We squeeze the juice. We sort of want lemon juice on. So we're not allowed to do that on Shabbos because there's an Isser Deraisa of schita, of squeezing. So the Rashba says ice can be turned into water. So it's oimed l'schita. Lefichach loses l'tocha kos muter she'ena nir kesochet. By putting ice in a cup and it melts on its own, it doesn't come anywhere near this concept of squeezing. You can crush it, crushed ice. Well, but you can get some of it. It starts making water more by crushing it. That's what the Gemara says. If you want to make water by crushing it, you can't do that. But you can, if you just let it sit there and melt, you can do that. That's right. That you can do, but crushing you can't. That's what Gemara said. It starts turning it into liquid. It starts turning it into liquid. There's some when you crush it. Correct, but sometimes it doesn't. Saul is pointing out that when you crush ice, you don't directly make liquid. It's not quite, so that it's just a gzeira. You are not over schita midoraisa by crushing ice. The Rashba is learning that it's a gzeira. It's a gzeira to stay away from the Isser of schita. The Magid Mishna infers that this is also how the Rambam viewed this, as he quotes the prohibition of crushing ice along with the halachas of squeezing fruit. So according to this view, it seems that heating up pashtita is permitted, even though the congealed fat will turn to liquid, because it's not similar to squeezing. The Smak writes that this is permitted as the fat does not become liquid through direct action. Ulachamim pashtita, to warm up kugel, ain iser bishvil shenim chashumin. There's no iser that you melted the fat inside. She'ein osim b'yadayim. It's not like you did it directly. The Shulchan Aruch rules leniently concerning allowing congealed fat to liquefy. The Ramah reports, though, that the Ashkenazi custom is to be stringent, although he agrees that one may be lenient if there's a need. Mutar litain empanada, right? That's in Spanish. An empanada is I know what an empanada is. It's made with dough, meat-filled pastry. Correct, Mario?
Yeah.
It's exactly what the Shulchan Aruch, Rav Yosef Karo, is a Sfaradi. So he's telling it. Mutter litain empanada, keneged ha'esh, you can move it closer to the fire, b'makom shayad soledes, even when it's hot. Aval pi shashumen sheba shenikra shchoizer v'nimuach. There's fat inside of it, it's going to melt, it's not a problem. Says the Ramah yesh machmirin, the nagula hachmir, mi b'makom tzarech yesh lismach asvar rishon. You can be lenient if you need to. The Mishnah adds that in any event, if you heated the pashtita, eating it is permitted. But if you shouldn't do it l'chatchila, if you did it, you can eat it. Elsewhere, the Shulchan Aruch quotes the main prohibition of crushing ice. Hashelek ve'abarot ein merat, so you shouldn't crush ice. Dainu l'shavram l'chatichos dakos, to cut them into small pieces. And you want eventually it to make water. But you can put ice into wine or mayim, and it melts on its own. That's not an Isser on Shabbos. excuse me, iminicham bechamo. You put them in the sun or connected amadur near a bonfire, near a fire, v'nifshru mutarim. It's not a problem. The Mishmur explains that according to Shulchan Aruch, one may leave ice to melt, even lechatchila, although according to the Ramah quote above, ice may only be left to melt inside a liquid, right? Says Mishnah Berurah, le'anos mehem, you can benefit from it. V'uadin demutcha lechatchila laniach. You can put ice in lechatchila in a cup. Kivin shememelu nimuach, it melts on its own. Now, he mentions the Ramah das Ramah that gam hachi yesh lahachmir, that you should be machmir the after nimuach me'elav aser mishum nolan. He brought that melting on its own is a problem with nolan ve'ena domeh. Says the Mishnah, it's not comparable. When you put ice in water and it melts, you can't even tell what's the ice and what's the. So it's not nicker. So that's the reason to be lenient, says the Mishnah. The Mishnah also clarifies that if eating pashtita does not produce recognizable liquefied fat, it's permitted even according to Ramah. If there's a lot of fat, and if it melts, you see it coming out, then it's recognizable on its own, then it would be osir, like the Ramah. It's not that fatty. But it's not, you're not putting it so close to the fire, so it's not going to melt so much. It just remains inside the pashtida. Everyone allows you to heat it up. It's a little bit comes out. Hushari lekula alma. You can heat up a piece of fatty meat, even though some melting. So these are all the permissions we have. Our wives take food out of the refrigerator every Shabbos.
No, we keep it out until it becomes room.
Fine. She's saying she keeps it up, but this heter that you can take fat and you're not worried that it's going to melt or anything, and you can put it on the blech. That's learning it from here. What are you showing me? That's a pashtida. Yeah, that's like an empanada.
No, it isn't.
That's not a.
This is like
This is a pashtida. It's a baked item.
It's like a quiche. They're calling it.
Susie is showing a picture of a quiche, which also is described as a pashtida.
It's like broccoli kugel.
A broccoli kugel, or any kugel would be a pashtida.
Yeah, but broccoli is a vegetable. We're talking about consumer fat that will basically.
No. We're talking about what did you call it, Susie? What did you call your broccoli thing? A quiche. It's dough.
No, it isn't.
Quiche has dough around.
It has
the
dough
bottom.
Quiche has
around-
dough, but
we
not
just
a
said a
broccoli kugel.
quiche.
But
But a quiche has dough.
most
So it
of
has
the-
broccoli and vegetables inside of it, but it has shuman. So it's like a pashtida. It's a cooked dish that's cooked with dough and that kind of thing.
Yeah, but a pashtida has meat inside it. It's a different thing.
Susie showed that a pashtida can also be this like a quiche. Doesn't have to be an empanada is surrounded by dough. Yes, but that pashtida has number of types of examples.
You can just Google pashtita.
Okay, Susie, next
Google pashtida.
Google.
Google pashtida, and they'll show you all the examples. Now, the Orchos Shabbos discusses
Crustless quiche or kugel. That's what
a
it is.
kugel and
It's
then crustless kugel or
It's like
pashtida.
kugel. Kugel's
Kug-
not with any
kugel.
dough.
Yeah, but pashtida is also with dough. That's clearly.
It says it's not here.
It's not. We see the Shulchan Aruch himself said an
Susie,
empanada.
that looks like pierogan to me.
Okay.
I sent the photo of the real
Oh, you sent
empanada.
the photo of
I'll show
pierogan?
you the photo of the empanada.
That looks like a pierogan to me.
No,
It says
no.
pashtita is a crustless pie, a casserole.
I know.
There's no crust,
Exactly.
like a kugel.
I know, but the Shulchan Aruch's description of a pashtida is an empanada, which does have
So include both.
crust.
I seen the photo of the real empanada.
Doesn't mean that, what they're saying is those other things are included in the definition of pashtida, even though they don't have
Why
this
don't they just
completely
say
surrounded by crust.
I'm getting hungry.
Show me the empanada picture. You gotta put something in it. Let's just learn this Orchos Shabbos, and as the final thing here. No, that's not a good picture of the empanada.
Harold, put the pashtida on the blech, you can toast it.
Okay. Im hotzi me'amekarer rotev dogim korush. You take out of the refrigerator congealed fish sauce.
Yeah.
This is bringing me back to Pesach at my grandmother, where she made cooked carp. I'm sure Harold's mother did the same. Maybe Walter is, they cooked carp, and it was that fish jelly. I didn't like that at all.
Yeah.
Yaakov, did you have the same thing? No. The Littas didn't do that. Only the
No.
toilet. Gala was feet, was meat. But the fish that they made on Pesach also had this jelly.
The only thing that we had on Pesach was filter fish or bulba knedlach. You know what bulba knedlach are?
No,
What was
what's
bulba?
that?
What was bulba?
Bulba is a potato knedel
Really?
that had gribenes inside it. That was better than anything else.
That's good.
That I can say. My grandmother used to make bulba knedlach. That was
And she lived to 120.
absolutely. If you ate those bulba knedlach, you lived to 120.
And retired. Nobody knew.
And bulba knedlach there's no gebrochts.
Right.
We need a resident chef for this Shurim.
You know what? But that's the Litvaks. That's what we ate.
You know what? I'm going to leave this Orchos Shabbos. This will be a good way to remind ourselves of all these dinim next week when we start. And we will continue. This continues for a while. So let's leave it here. And any questions, other comments? I mean, we've been making comments throughout. Ooh, that looks good. What is that? What is that?
I guess we all didn't eat enough on Pesach.
What is, Solis, what is that?
That's the steak I used years ago. I used to get at La Gondola. They don't do that anymore.
She says
That
that.
size,
She said that was a steak at La Gondola.
Wow.
Okay, guys, have a wonderful week and wonderful show.